Welcome back to another episode of From the Workbench. So, today we have a Dyson DC65 here in the store, and the customer has said that there's no suction. So, no suction from this Dyson. So, we are going to check it out and see what might be going on. Wait, I thought this was a vacuum that was never supposed to lose suction, you say. Well, one thing you'll learn about the vacuum industry is, vacuum companies tend to seem to think they can say whatever the heck they want. So, they don't really have to, they can put a bunch of conditions on that, like never lose the suction when the moon is full and you're picking up, flower petals. Oh, did you hear that? Okay, listen for this. Listen. It didn't do it again. That first time I ran it, you heard like a hissing sound come on, like a psst. That is the bypass valve. So a lot of vacuums have a bypass valve that will turn on when the vacuum is experiencing a clog or some sort of restriction. What it does is it allows air to bleed into the machine, and that has two effects. Number one, it's designed to try to keep the motor from toasting itself, and then number two, it's designed not to damage any seals or anything like that by creating too much of a negative pressure system, because these systems are only rated to a certain amount of pressure, right? So this is definitely clogged somewhere here in the works. So we're gonna take down the cord. We're gonna pop this guy off, and we're going to take a peek and see what might be going on with this guy. I've explained in other videos why the complex air pathway on these Dysons, particularly the Ball, but really most Dysons, but especially the Ball, really, all of its different flavors, they're much more prone to clogging than your standard machine. So we're going to take a peek and see why it might be doing that. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to check we're going to go ahead and check the air pathway and make sure that all of the pathways coming up from the nozzle up into the cup and then the alternate pathway to the attachments, that all those are working properly. Don't have any obstructions in them. So flipping this guy over, there's just one clip, this whole assembly comes off. Alright, so we can see a string of stuff coming in. Aha! And what do we have here? We have a Christmas tree hook. It is January 29th, I think, and or 28th, one or the other. And we are still coming off of the post-Christmas rush, and we have a Christmas tree hook that was stuck in the nozzle. So this by itself is not enough to cause that reaction we saw from the machine with the clog sound, but this definitely would have become a clog itself if left here in the housing. You can see here, even though this hole right here is, probably about 1.25 inches, decent size inlet. Down inside here, it's very, very narrow. Let's see if we can zoom in on that. So you can see here that inlet, between the motor and the bottom plate is super duper narrow, which is great for focusing airflow, but it's really bad for clogging. This is just like we saw that hook get stuck right there. This is a really common area for clogs to start if you start loading up too much junk into that area. I mean, you're looking at maybe 1/2 inch top to bottom in terms of clearance. Definitely not big enough for some of the debris that households encounter. Not saying you should pick up something that large, but accidents do happen. You may not even realize it, and in that case, you're going to be kind of up a creek because your inlet's so small. So what we're going to do now, let me zoom back out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start testing the different air pathways and see if we can find where there might be some resistance. So, didn't find any obstructions in the hose either. So, we've verified number one. Well, the reason why I was playing around with that is because this valve right here is leaking. That wouldn't cause it to sound clogged, but there's a plastic valve right here which switches when the vacuum goes upright, it switches it to tools. When the handle is unlocked, it switches it to floors. And this valve right here, the seal on it is leaking. You could hear that different sound, that whoosh of air, and that was it leaking past that valve. But we know that there's not a clog there, so our next potential culprit is going to be the filters and the cup, namely the Cyclones. So we want to check the filter. The filter looks great. This actually looks brand new. I mean, it's been used very, very little. So they may have just replaced this, or they've just kept this up impeccably. I don't know which is the case there, but it's definitely in fine condition. So so that's not our issue. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to pop that back in, create a sealed system, and I'm going to try to see, I think I see where the problem lies, but we're going to test it first. So let me get some suction going here. Not terrible, but there is some resistance. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what I'm seeing and what is probably the cause of this issue. So you can see here, I don't know why it's limited only to the back side, but this whole section right here is just covered with dirt. And we've got really fine dirt coming out from the bottom. So this is why the vacuum wasn't breathing. It's essentially just got half of the airflow that it should coming into the motor, because the dirt's drawn into the cup, then it comes through this mesh filter, the air comes through this mesh filter, then through the Cyclone. So this is really designed to be kind of a heavy particulate filter for hair or large lint. Then up here we've got the Cyclones, which are in theory supposed to separate the fine dust from the air, and the secondary filter, which finishes that job before the air enters the motor. But in this case, we've definitely got some blockage going on there. So they don't need a new filter, but they do need the cup and Cyclones cleaned. Let's check something else. Let me just clean up this mess real quick. Real quick, as part of the test here, I want to check the HEPA. Now that secondary filter looked so good, I can't imagine this being in horrible shape. Yeah, and that looks great. That is actually probably one of the cleanest Dyson HEPA filters I've seen in a long time. Typically these are gunked with hair and junk that are, if we can get it to focus, come on. Focus. There we go. So typically these are caked with hair and junk, but this just has some very fine dust in it, and a very small amount at that. You can see up here closest to the motor exhaust, we've got some blackening from the carbon brushes. That's normal, but no large buildup in the pleats. This is good to go. So we're not going to need to replace that. So really, what this needs is This really just needs the Cyclone assembly cleaned. So that's what I'm going to estimate her for, and we'll give her a call and see if that's what she wants to do, and then we'll go from there. So we may have a continuation if she decides to go through with it. I don't know why she wouldn't. It's not going to be very expensive, and that'll get her back on the road. So I would still recommend a better vacuum so this doesn't happen again, because again, if you don't maintain a Dyson in multiple different areas, you're going to end up with issues like this. You know, what they don't tell you when you buy a bagless machine is that instead of changing bags, you're going to end up changing, you know, filters, cleaning filters, washing filters, checking screens. You know, it still ends up being a ton of work. It's not maintenance free by any stretch of the imagination. But in any case, we'll see what this lady says, and we will get back to you. Thanks for joining us on this episode from the Workbench. And my name is Matt with House of Vacuums. Take care.